NTSC spec 29.95 or whatever that video rate is. And I do that trying to, but Freaked, for example, is 24 because it is film. There's no way around it. I wouldn't, there's no extra frames in running a 24 frame film. So the title sequence is 24.
It was like Super 8?
No. That was 35 millimeter Freaked. You saw the title sequence. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, no, that's not. I mean, the only Super 8 film I did was Duchy of Frog, which is going way back when I was 13 or 12. That was Super 8.
Is that the one on Story of Straticut?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it's, I have a copy, or copies, and I still have the original, and there will be a point where I have hope that maybe I'll live long enough that the original will be restored. You know, AI'd up, 4K'd up, all sorts of new information brought back that's missing because the Super 8 is so blurry. Maybe. It's still, you know, juvenilia. You know, it's still a early child-driven narrative. I guess that was, I don't know, you know, was it 16 frames a second or 18? Was it 24? I think Duchy of Frog was running at 24, I think. I don't know why I bring it up, but Buzzbox was trying to be ultra fluid, and I try to be like MTV stuff. I was trying to be ultra fluid. The Peter Gabriel stuff, I think, is running at 30. Maybe it is running at 24. When they're going to video for a final, that's when I would run it at 30. And Buzzbox was 36 because I had never done Straticut before. So I was always guessing what the result would be on the timing as an output. And as I was editing it, 24 was too slow and 48 was too fast. And it was edited on rewinds, which is an old, you know what rewinds are? You take a film and you have two little rollers on each side. It's rewinds. And then I put it into a Moviola, which is a little light device that shows you what the frames are doing, but you're doing it by hand. So it was all edited by hand without any machinery because no machine ran at 36. So I was approximating. I would just sort of like go tick, tick, tick. And I would know, okay, this is the distance that it's going. So I could calculate, okay, this is about 36 frames a second. And it looked good then. It's like it held together, I call it the gestalt, but it had to be faster for you to make sense of some of the images. The slower it was, some of the weirder images didn't hold together. They just sort of like, oh, I'm blobby and weird. But you ran a little faster, and it's like, oh, and I am, you know, a man talking in a bunch of chatter that, you know, made sense. And it was an equalizing number, meaning some of the scenes were a little too slow and some were a little too fast, but it was the best middle ground that made all of them kind of hang together.
And you had like the slices of film, like how? I don't really understand how you were editing it.
Oh, I can show you at some point. I still have the real rewinds, but what you have is a film used to be edited on a workbench, which means sort of like this little thing, only you had two of them, and you were rolling the film on two different reels, and you were using two handles, and you were rolling it back and forth at whatever speed you wanted, and it would have this little light roller device, and it would show you frame, 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 frame. And that little device was the way to see, you know, film is 180 degrees black, 180 degrees open, right? The shutter on a projector is actually, when you're watching a movie, half the time you're seeing black. I don't know if you've dived into that one, but the persistence of vision is such that the black frame, the black moment between each frame, is when the shutter comes around in front of the projector, the whole gate moves and advances it to the next frame, and then it reveals it to you, oh, this is the next frame. And it allows you to see that for another 180 degrees, and then this comes around, shuts it off, and then the machine is doing its machine work in that blackness, and it comes around again, and you're seeing it still. That's projectors. So the Moviola is sort of a personal way to see that. If you ever look up Moviola, you'll see these old devices. And generally, they would work on machines. They would have something running at 24. That's a motor that would force it to run at 24 frames a second, because that's what you think it should be. And then there's Steenbecks, or you can put them on a table, and a table editor is more probably maybe common. I don't know. You have the two rolls are going horizontal to the ground, and it's going through its own little gate down here, and it goes up and projects a larger screen. So a lot of movies got edited on that. It's called a flatbed. Mm-hmm. But the vertical editing came out of D.W. Griffith, and then the Moviola. All the movies edited on the Moviola was motorized. So rather than rewinds this way, they had rewinds this way. And the rewind was motorized, and it was bringing the film down through the little thing that you looked at, and it was running at 24 frames. And that's actually, Hollywood editors love that, because there's something about the ability to put in new footage and take it out, and you're sort of micro-edit. You have more control to micro-edit. You kind of are working on smaller sequences all the time when you do it with a Moviola. And the Steenbeck, the flatbed, came in the 60s and 70s. And it was more for longer documentaries first. But when you see a Hollywood movie edited, the scenes are just sort of longer, and it's talkier. And I don't know, there's something less Hollywood editing when you use this style, because you're comfortable watching it. You're not in there sort of fidgeting with every splice and every 10 frames and every little, yeah. Hopefully that anecdote makes sense. All right, go ahead.
I just had another question for green screening.
Yeah.
How did you do that?
You know these little cavities I'm talking about? Like if I do this like that, mm-hmm. and I build sort of a lot of open tendrils that are not supported even. What I'll do is put this into a box, like just literally a box, and I'll pour green clay, molten green clay, mm-hmm. over it, and it'll fill in all the corners and seep into all the extra places. So it's literally a box, and the green clay has just by molten has filled it all up. And so you can green screen anything. You can color key Stratacut with the colored background dropping out when you key it. Does that make sense?
But what like program would you use back?
Oh, for keying. Oh, that's how I built the key in clay. It was called a.
It's red.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right there. It was called a. Digital editor. Flame. You know Flame? Have you ever heard of Flame? It's like After Effects, but before After Effects. And it ran on proprietary hardware and software. It came from SGI, which was proprietary. Are you running? Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. SGI's proprietary hardware. So it's like hot rodded. It's not PC. It's like specialty hardware, hot rodding. It ran both the digital flame, which was a way of compositing. It's sort of like a souped up single purpose After Effects is how you think of it. So it had more power than a PC because they literally wired the bus. I don't know how much computer stuff you know, but the bus is the amount of information that can travel between the CPU and the memory. how much it can pass back and forth to process. So the bigger your bus, the more slots this information can go back and forth, the faster the faster you can actually render stuff. So a lot of the SGI was doing those tricks, like creating pipelines that were so much bigger than what a PC chip would do. This would be 1990, late 80, maybe 89, 88 is the flame it began. But what I really liked, I'm going to bring you a whole different brand and a different method, is the Harry from Quantel. And so it was also a proprietary box, but they had built hot wired memory and these other extra pieces. And I just thought their interface was, they created something called the paint box. Their entry was the paint box. It was like Photoshop, but much more, so a lot of graphics and just more powerful than Photoshop, at least at the time, much more, because it had all the proprietary chips in it. And then from the paint box, they developed, that would be in the mid 80s, you get paint box. And then you'd have the flame, was developed from it, so it could do motion. It wasn't just a paint box. It was, Quantel, apologies. Quantel did the paint box. Everybody used it. They made the Harry. In 92, they made the Harry. In 91. The reason it's such a significant moment because I was able to do digital compositing for the first time. Really, I never had to suffer through video compositing, where you're laying 1 inch on 1 inch on 1 inch. You take a 1 inch reel, you add your effect, you lay it to another 1 inch reel. A lot like ancient audio laybacking. And so digital compositing just was so much cleaner. You had such better mats. Quantel had the paint box, then they had the Harry, and then in, 95, maybe 93, they came out with the Henry. I don't know why they like these names. They're British, maybe that's why. So the Henry was a really, really, really powerful Harry. Just like, they souped that up. And so you could really do some amazing effects by the early 90s that were digital effects using these specialty devices. I thought it was much better, for me at least, and the people you work with are the magic, right? Their ability to really hot rod what they know in those machines. And the people I worked with on the Harry and Henry were great and just whipped that stuff out. So it was really, it could have been so much more painful if I had been trying to do this 10 years earlier. Imagine what devices I would have had to use. So digital compositing, that's where its birth.
And that was by the time you did BuzzBox. That was digital.
No, BuzzBox was all in camera, and I didn't have the money. BuzzBox was the 85.
You didn't green screen it and overlay it?
No.
Oh, it was all physically
Take
overlaid.
a moment and take that in.
I thought it was green screen.
No, it's all under the camera, and I can explain that later. But simply, you have well, they call it a platen, but a glass. You have a glass. It's
multiplane.
Yeah, it's multiplane. Yeah, so it's 6 inches, 10 inches above the background. The background is a abstract shape. I'm sorry, it's a big plane. You'll see. I'll show you some of these backgrounds. They're all textured, and what I did was move them around randomly, like every 6 frames. I would just go X, Y, Z, Y, X, Y, Z, Y. So they're never in quite the same place, and so that would create a kind of background shatter. And then the actual animation was 8 inches above that, and it was going up vertically. It was built like this guy is built, up this way. And so the camera was looking down. And so as I was cutting it away, many things were going on. First, I threw a piece of glass right next to the lens at the top, which never came into play until the very end. So as I'm cutting away, that piece of glass is just sitting there doing nothing. I cut away, this comes to the very bottom of the lens, of the glass. It's the last slice is there. It's sitting on that glass. And that's the moment that I can put, I often put regular incandescent bulbs underneath it, which created a glow effect. I would strobe this glow effect to try to create an outline. So you couldn't see the light, but you could see the halo effect, and it was bouncing all over the place. But you just saw this thing kind of going in the background. That light was heating up the clay slightly, just enough, just a little warmth. That by the time I got to the last slice was sort of warm. And I would take the glass that had been sitting up here and literally throw it all the way to the bottom and begin to heat it even more and melt and slide it. So a lot of those melt slides were done that way. So the question is, why did I have to put the glass at the top? And that's because it has a third of a stop. It is opaque to a third of a stop, and you would notice it popped on. So it was trying to be there to darken it all the way through, to have its opacity consistent. So when it landed down on the platen for the very last slice, you wouldn't notice that the density had changed on the...
And you would actually drop it?
No, I wouldn't drop it. I mean, I would carefully lower it. But literally, it's sitting there static for 5 seconds. And at the end of the shot, as I'm cutting away, and then I would literally, it would go all the way to the bottom. You just like literally in one frame, you jumped in one frame.
Yeah.
But you don't notice the pop because there's no opacity difference having pre-added that. And then I would do a lot of hand manipulation on the platen. A lot of it's lighting effects. And then once you heat it, you could take that glass and press it and slowly smear it. Like every frame I was just going smear slowly, heat, 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 smear. And so it would liquefy, and that was a lot of the Indians, a lot of buzzbox was done that way. So, hello.
You like cold pizza?
All right. Well, she was getting some good interview at the end there.
That's good.
Yeah.
We can cut.
Yeah. Thank you. That was so much easier than trying to do a demo, that part of it.